There are moments in every person's life when they face intense adversity. They're crucibles that forge who they become as individuals and as leaders. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are called to a higher standard, focused on leaving it better than they found it, and paying it forward to the next generations. Now, let's join Fire Chief Randy Brugman as he speaks with leaders from all walks of life, as he explores and learns from their personal journeys and the crucibles that have forged them into better leaders and better people.
Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Crucible. Today I have the pleasure of having Dr. Todd Mosher on the show. Dr. Mosher is the Blue Origin Director of Customer Experience for Orbital Reef, a commercial space station to replace the International Space Station later this decade. He was previously a senior manager at Amazon leading the Project Cooper Technical Program Management Team. That project is one of the most ambitious commercial programs, consisting of a constellation of over 3,200 satellites to provide low latency, high-speed broadband connectivity around the world. Before that, Dr. Mosher had worked on a project called Project Santa to restore Amazon's global fulfillment network capacity during the pandemic. Dr. Mosher has 32 years of experience working in the industry and serving as a faculty member at 3 universities: Utah State University, University of California at Los Angeles, and the International Space University. He has directed the design of both human spaceflight and robotic spaceflight. He led and wrote successful proposals resulting in opportunities valued at over $5 billion from defense, civil, and commercial space customers. Past employers include the Aerospace Corporation and General Dynamics. Dr. Mosher has a PhD and an MS in Aerospace Engineering from the University of Colorado, an MS in Systems Engineering from the University of Alabama in Huntsville, and a BS in Aerospace Engineering from San Diego State University. He is a National Academies recognized expert, serving on 7 different panels, including presenting results of a review of NASA's technology portfolio to high-ranking government officials at NASA, Congress, and the executive branch. He serves on the Board of Trustees for the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, where he is also an associate fellow. Todd was selected as a NASA astronaut finalist in 2009. Well, Todd, welcome to the Leadership Crucible. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I was telling Chris earlier, I think you are the first rocket scientist that we've actually had on the show. So,
well, I had to go to a lot of school to get that qualification.
I know.
So I appreciate the recognition.
So yeah, I know. And can you tell us really, how did you find yourself pursuing a PhD in aerospace engineering?
So, and probably a little bit like yourself with wanting to be a fireman when you were a kid, I started off with wanting to be an astronaut. And I didn't really have much of a shot. I feel like I can blame my parents for a little bit of brainwashing. I had astronaut wallpaper. I had, I got the G.I. Joe astronaut as a kid. I was taken to Disneyland to ride the rockets around and around in Tomorrowland all those early years. I was fortunate enough. My father worked at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory as a chemical technician. He worked on the Mars Viking mission, which was the first landing on Mars, and he also has his name on the Voyager disk that has now left our solar system. So he was bringing stuff home from work pretty much every day, the new images of the planets that were coming out and everything else. And so, that the seed was planted early, and I guess I didn't ever let go of that. So I studied, aerospace engineering in college and in my undergraduate years, and then went on to get a master's degree and enjoyed it and was interested in also, the aspect that it would open the door to be a college professor, which I've gotten to do as well. But the interesting thing about that whole astronaut path is it's a very long journey. And so you better kind of enjoy your life along the way that you get there. I was fortunate enough to get all the way to the stage in 2009 of being a finalist. So an original pool of about 5,000 applicants, down to 110 finalists, which I was a part of that, got to go through the interview process. And then they picked 9. So you can see what those extreme odds were. So I didn't make the final cut, but I felt like I got pretty far, and all of that education and experience was beneficial, even if I didn't make it to the big leagues as far as astronauts.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine how that process was, and what did you learn as you went through that process?
Well, it was really interesting, especially the interview process itself. The actual interview was, not very long, analogous to what we're doing here, having a conversation with a bunch of people staring at you in a room. But the whole, week you were down there at the NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston, you kind of knew you were being interviewed all the time. And that was a interesting phenomenon in terms of just having to be on every day and trying to, be positive and so forth. It's just, it's hard to, almost concentrate that much time. And we had one of the things we got as an assignment is, midweek they ask you to write an essay, and then you got to write it, that night and provide it the next day. They kind of want to see how you can respond to assignments like that and so forth. So it was, an amazing experience. The people that I got to interview with, because you do it as a group, you kind of knew you were an elite company, that they could pick any of these people. And so just to, be a part of that group that went through that selection process was an honor in and of itself.
Yeah, amazing. Well, congratulations on getting to that point. I mean, even of the 5,000 that were selected, the qualifications that you had to have to even apply puts you in a very elite group, even to be able to do that.
Well, it was a lot of fighter pilots, and then a lot of people that just were collecting degrees, like the path I took.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, true. So, well, today you're kind of on a little bit different journey, not totally, but you're the director of customer experience, space destinations for Blue Origin. And can you share a little bit about what Blue Origin's mission is, and about Blue Origin, and what you do in your current position?
You bet. So, this is Jeff Bezos' space company. Jeff has set a very bold mission for us. It's millions of people living and working in space for the betterment of Earth. And so, what's really important with that is we always remember the spaceship we're flying on today, which is Earth itself, and how we need to take care of that and so forth. But, as we can look at ways to allow people to live and work in space, I think it'll just broaden what we're able to do. There's a lot of industries that either will be created or even can be moved off planet to kind of preserve Earth itself, and just open up a whole new kind of economy. There are others that want to leave because they worry that, well, Earth's not going to be here forever. We kind of take the different approach that we'd like to preserve Earth, and that's why we're going to other places, is to make it better.
Yeah.
My particular role is I'm working on the Orbital Reef Space Station, and the Orbital Reef Space Station is a commercial replacement for the current International Space Station. And I have a really fun job with customer experience, because being commercial, we're going to actually have guests that go to the space station. So it won't just be that group of astronauts that I tried to join. It's going to be, folks from all over the world that'll be going there. It'll be scientists. It'll be, space tourists. It'll be, people doing all kinds of different things in space, probably many we can't imagine. Podcasts, maybe next time we could talk, I could be calling from there.
That'd
I
be
would
good.
love that opportunity. But, all kinds of different capabilities, and the ISS has been spectacular for pioneering a lot of that stuff. But now we're looking at taking what was a government enterprise and making it a commercial enterprise. And so that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, if you look back at the history of what has been developed and has become part of the commercial landscape today out of the NASA missions, and you extrapolate that over, I mean, if we have private space missions, you just think what can be developed in space and brought back here.
Well, yeah, well, it was amazing just this week. I was out here in Florida at the Space Coast, and there was a launch this week, and it's to the point these days. There's almost, it feels like a launch every week or every 2 weeks, and we're just getting started. I think we're not that far away from there will literally be multiple space launches per week, and that's just exciting. I don't think we'll ever quite get to like an airport traffic. Maybe, who knows? But just the fact that you can go see a launch several times a week when you go out there to visit is amazing, which I encourage anybody to go do. It's a great thing to watch.
Well, and one of, I think, the basic tenets of what you're developing with Blue Origin is the reusable spacecraft. So that you can make it more affordable for general population, such as general aviation.
Correct. Yeah, and we're picking up some of the things that SpaceX has originally pioneered by reusing their boosters, and we're following that same path. Obviously, if you don't throw away all the hardware every flight, it makes it more economical. Now, there's more upfront cost to doing it that way. But in the long run, it makes it a lot better, and that's what's really fun working for Blue Origin. Is it's all about the long run, not just tomorrow.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would encourage people to get on the website and just look at some of the spacecraft that you're in development with, and the space station, and it's fascinating work that you're doing.
Well, and that's only the stuff we tell you about.
I know.
So there's even more fun stuff to come.
Probably many more, inventions that are on the table, I would imagine.
Yep. It's a pretty fun place for someone like me. It's I guess I'm working in Charlie's chocolate factory. So.
That's a good way to put it. So, as you've journeyed through your life, I know you've faced your own crucibles that have kind of helped shape who you've become. And could you share some of those with our audience? Because I think it's always good to take away that people that have become very successful and have achieved much like yourself, it probably wasn't an easy path always. And so, could you share a couple of those events that really helped shape you?
Yeah, so I had a pretty challenging period a few years ago where actually my father had a glioblastoma, a brain tumor. My mother had what was originally diagnosed as Parkinson's, but became something known as progressive supranuclear palsy, PSP, which is similar to ALS, and so a very debilitating, slow. My father went pretty quickly. My mother was a very slow decline, and then my wife had Hodgkin's lymphoma, all overlapping in a very short period of time, and then even some work challenges trying to balance all of those personal challenges, and it was really interesting. I got some really good advice from my pastor when I was going through that. Pastor Chad would say, "Todd, you got to look at all this stuff as blessings." And of course, at the time, I'm just like, "Are you crazy? What is this stuff? What are you telling me?" But it was interesting when you started to look at it through that lens. It kind of changed the way you approached it and changed the way you approach those challenges. And so one of the interesting things is because of my father's time in hospice, we ended up having, conversations over the last, month and a half of his life that we had never had in our life before. And I think it was just because of the situation being terminal like that and so forth. same sort of thing. You learn to treasure those experiences with your mom and my wife. My wife, fortunately, is completely healthy today and has come out of the other end cancer free and remains so to this day. But it gives you just kind of a different perspective when you don't feel like you're cursed and you don't feel like all this thing is what did I do? I still teased my pastor that, well, I've heard that the later chapters of this book of Job that I'm living get a little bit better, but I'm not there yet. And so you do kind of learn to kind of grind it out with, kind of the hope and faith that you'll come out the other end a lot better. And I think, by going through all that, it does just give you a different approach to life and how you appreciate, and just gratitude, I think, is the strongest thing it gave me. Is you just got to be thankful for what you have, just because all of this is finite in some way. And so enjoy it while you have it. Don't take it for granted, I guess.
Yeah, that's an excellent observation. I mean, we've all lost relatives, sometimes very quickly, and sometimes you were blessed that you were able to have those conversations with your father. Many people don't get that opportunity.
Exactly.
So good takeaway there is, don't wait until something significant happens. Have those conversations now.
Yeah, don't wait to hug somebody. Don't wait to tell them that you love them.
Yeah.
Do it when you have the chance.
Yeah. So you've been involved with several projects and initiatives that have deployed and managed low orbit systems in space. And so, I think for the general population, they know about satellite orbitry and things like that. But, there's a lot that goes into that. And just wondered if you could share a little bit about, what it takes to do that.
Yeah, let me give you just a few examples. I mean, what's generally interesting about satellites and anything else we put into space is, first of all, they're going into a very harsh environment. We have large temperature differences. We have radiation. We have just surviving the rough ride to orbit. Puts you through a lot of different forces and all that stuff. The other part of it that's really fascinating, in general, there's sometimes that we're able to not do this, but it's certainly the exception, is you got to put that into orbit and you can't really repair it. You can't really do any maintenance. You can't upgrade it very easily except through software. And so there aren't too many, problems like that. If you can imagine your car not being able to touch it, and for 5 years, you had to be able to drive it. That might be nice, but it would probably cost a lot more expensive. I mean, that's part of the reason why space endeavors are pretty expensive. Is you're pretty much hands off after it gets to orbit, other than what you can do from software and those kind of changes. And so it just makes it a pretty hard challenge, and I think that's probably what makes it so exciting. Is you're really overcoming a lot of things being stacked against you to just make the thing work. And so the fact that we're able to get a lot better at that, and we're making a lot of things work, not only in orbit around the Earth, but going to planets throughout the solar system. And like I mentioned, Voyager, we're finally having objects that are actually leaving the solar system and still talking to us. That's quite remarkable.
Yeah, it's amazing. Some of the pictures that have come back and the clarity of the photography that we're able to actually see is just incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah, I got hooked as a kid. They were sending back early black and white photos, and so the pictures you get from things like James Webb Space Telescope and Hubble Space Telescope and all the things going around, all the planets and so forth, are just remarkable. They're truly like something we've never seen.
No. So when you're going to put a satellite system in service, from point of design, so to speak, until you can actually place it in orbit, how long does that typically take?
Well, it really depends on the mission. It really depends on how much experience we have. I was fortunate enough that I was a part of a very small satellite mission. It's called Capstone. It's flying around the moon currently using a special orbit. It's about the size of a microwave oven, so it's pretty small from that standpoint. And that mission was done in less than 2 years. The James Webb Space Telescope that is doing fantastic science now took a lot longer and cost a lot more than what was expected. So that was, gosh, I think almost a decade that it took to put together something like that. So it kind of depends, but it certainly, we're not to the point that we're building and flying them in months. We are talking year time frames, but we can get things smaller up there on a much faster timeline than we used to be able to do in the past. And then with these, different systems that are being put into LEO. I worked on Kuiper, which Amazon's doing. SpaceX has Starlink. We're actually finally starting to mass produce satellites, and that'll probably change pretty fundamentally how quickly we can build them and fly them as well.
Yeah, and it's just amazing how that's impacting just our everyday life, just being able to access information and, GPS and all of the things that we just kind of take for granted every day, right?
Well, and it's having, one of the things that they've cited over and over again is the Starlink service in Ukraine is changing how that works because people there are able to still have communication where normally, a key military tactic is to try to limit the communication and isolate folks. And they haven't been able to do that, which I think has really helped them have the success against the Russians that they have.
Yeah, good point. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about, because you've had a lot of experience in academics, but also in business as well. And leadership plays a critical role in that. And so, what's your perspective on the current state of leadership in our society today?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we're at times missing or is not being as high of expectations as I think we should have is on the importance of integrity and character. I think that those kind of were just a, first line on a resume, if you will, to be a leader in the past. And I feel like we've let those relax quite a bit. Being honest, representing your qualifications accurately, basically your word having value. As opposed to, well, if they said it, I don't believe it. Even if you write it down and you sign it, people don't believe it. I think that's problematic. And so I think it's very important. You can never underestimate the value of trust. And the only way you establish trust is through integrity. And I think we need to learn to rebuild trust in each other as individuals, but certainly the leaders need to learn to rebuild that trust with us so that we're happy following their directions and not doubting them every time they say something.
Yeah, excellent points, and I think we've got a couple of good examples going on that right now at the federal level.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna hang too many people out there because the sad thing is today's example will be forgotten, and there'll be other examples when people would look at this 3 months from now, and it would be a lot greater if we had to struggle to come up with those examples.
Yeah, very, very true, and hopefully today's examples don't become tomorrow's reality, and we really need to. I think we really need to step back and really focus on integrity and being reliant on a value set that is based on good ethics. And it seems like we've kind of lost that.
Well, and I think what people have also lost is to a certain extent, they have now started to identify from a biology standpoint that the success of the human species is because we depend on each other. And if we can't trust each other, in our local tribes, but in our global tribes, to be able to work together, I think it's puts us all at risk in one way or another. And so, yeah, I think that's something that we've got to remember, that kindness and being there for each other is part of why we've been able to do the things we do. And if we lose track of that, I think we're really vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I think it's a foundational element to our own sustainability, and
Yeah.
sometimes we don't think and look at it that in that perspective, but it really is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the next generation of leaders, those that are just emerging and coming in and taking over their own teams, or they'll be leading us at some point in the future, what do you see as emerging issues today that they're going to have to deal with, and how will that impact them in their role?
Well, I think it's tempting that the world is so dynamic, and everybody talks about how fast everything is moving and so forth, that people, I think, get too much into a reaction mode as opposed to a proactive mode. And so I love a quote by former President Dwight D. Eisenhower, where he said, plans are worthless, but planning is invaluable, I think is the way that the quote goes. And I think it's very tempting these days for people to not have a plan for what they're going to do, to just kind of react to whatever comes their way and so forth. And I think, it's very important for people to make plans, but also have the flexibility to respond to the dynamic nature of what's going on. Certainly my own career took various pivots and so forth, but I always kind of had that long-term plan for the longest time of wanting to be an astronaut. And so, I always had that North Star that I could point back to, even if I got a little bit off course. I think it's really important for young leaders to try to figure out what that is, and it's fine if that changes as well. I mean, that's the part of it that's interesting. But always do be making plans for the future. Figure that out. It helps give you kind of a course of action, and then when things come up, be flexible to the situation, and do some more planning, because I think it's valuable.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I share that same opinion with many of the firefighters that I would hire over the years, and I probably have hired, I don't know, 350, 400 firefighters during my career. And that's one of the things I would tell them as we graduated them from recruit school is as soon as you get off probation, well, even before, start to lay out what your game plan is for the next 3, 5, 7, 10 years. Doesn't mean it wasn't going to change, because opportunities will present themselves or a door may open that you don't see right now. But if you're not planning for your educational elements, certifications, what you want to be when your tenure's in the service, you probably are not going to get there. And so it's really, really critical, I think.
Well, I would think it would also be even more crucial in many of the situations you had. If you didn't have a plan going into a building, you could get into a lot of trouble. But you guys had to be the ultimate flexible folks of responding to whatever you learned once you went in, and once you had those battles. But I would be really surprised if a firefighter ever entered a building without a plan. I can't imagine that went very well if they just kind of winged it and saw how it went. So.
Yeah, I mean, you knew the mission when you drive up, and it's just like anything else. When something's on fire, you've got your initial game plan, but once you enter the building, that plan may go out the window, and you have to create a new one. So,
yeah.
much like it is in life, right?
Yeah.
I agree. You just never know.
Agree.
You just never know where your journey's going to take you. So you've got to be open, But when it takes you in a different direction, you've got to redefine your plan so that you can be successful.
Yeah.
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 So, last question for you today is: what advice would you give to the next generation in respect to really making a difference in their life journey? And I do have an additional question I will ask you.
Well, I guess a couple different things that I have found that are um, really important as you go through life. Um, First of all, I talked about the codependency we have on each other. Relationships are invaluable. I'm literally on your podcast today because of a relationship we have with our mutual friend Ben May, and those make such a difference. And I think what's really important is to understand what's the right kind of relationships. So there's a book that I read recently by Arthur C. Brooks called Strengths to Strengths. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but he has an interesting section where he talks about whether you have real relationships or deal relationships. And deal relationships are unfortunately what a lot of us have with folks, where it's just an interaction because you're getting a service from somebody, or getting help from somebody, or you're trying to sell someone or something like that. But you don't find having as many real relationships these days in your lives. And yet, when you come to the end and so forth, those are what you're going to remember the most. Those are the things that are really going to open the doors for you. And so, take the extra time to get to know the people you're talking to. Do the extra homework to find out their background, and not just on a professional level, so that it's not just a deal. Try to, understand where they come from personally, ask about their families, their relationships, where they live, hobbies, and all that stuff. And when you develop that level of relationships with people, it just opens up things that you could never anticipate, versus if you just stick to the transactional thing, you really limit yourself in the future. And so I think, learning to build those kind of relationships at all different levels, not just those above you, but certainly your peers. And then also those that, as you rise up the level, if you don't build those relationships with the teams that you may lead, they're going to be less likely to follow if they're just, following you because they have to. You want them to follow you because they want to. And so that's where you learn, I think, the most powerful type of leadership is not authoritative, but leadership by influence. And you only gain that if people actually want to follow you. And the only way that people want to follow you is because they believe there's a reason to. This isn't just transactional for you.
Yeah, well, that's a good framework for servant leadership, isn't it? And
Yes, it is.
yeah,
And I think that's the other surprise for a lot of people is, everybody has the pyramid and I'm trying to get to the top. And you learn as you go up the pyramid, it's kind of inverted,
yes,
and you need to serve more of the people below you and so forth as you get to the top. And the sooner you can kind of grasp that idea, I think you naturally are going to, rise up in what you're responsible for.
yeah. No, excellent point. I think some of our most productive and successful organizations have created this internal value alignment that's based off servant leadership and that inversion of that pyramid, where they're putting their customers and employees first, which really drives, I think, the organization to a level that they would have never been able to achieve if they just were through the old system of I'm in charge, I'm the boss, this is what we're going to do, and so I think I also think from a value alignment standpoint, I think our next two generations are really looking to work for people that align with what they believe and aspire to be.
Yeah. One of the things I have liked both about Amazon and Blue Origin is we have leadership principles, and it's not just a plaque that goes on the wall. That's a part of the daily language at both those organizations, and I think it makes a difference. Now, people, especially with some of the recent layoffs and so forth, are you really living those principles? The challenge with those principles is they're hard to live, and you may not always achieve it as an organization. But that doesn't mean you should just, crinkle them up and throw them away. If you don't have something that's difficult to strive for, you're really not going to become one of those value-based organizations like we talked about.
Yep. If you don't have a target on the wall, you'll never achieve it. So you've got to have where you need, that vision of where you need to go, and could be a lifelong pursuit sometimes, but
it can be. Well, and then like in my own instance, I was able to pivot. I'm not going to get to fly in space probably, but now I'm much more kind of in the servant mode of hopefully I enable a lot of others to fly into space. And that's kind of a multiplier that, while I'd still love to do it as an individual, if I let, really enable a future where millions get to do this, that's probably a bigger impact than just me going and planting a flag somewhere.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. So this is the last question for today. But what takeaways would you like to leave with everyone today about how you can become a better leader, a better person as you move forward in your own life?
Well, we've touched on a few different themes, but I think one is trying to understand what your personal values are, and trying to have those values guide you. And it's hard for all of us. And if you don't have those kind of front and center for your life, you can get kind of distracted on what you're doing. The world's a very distracting place these days. And so finding out what those are, there's, a variety of different approaches out there to be able to do that. But take the time to figure out, what makes me tick, what are my values, and what is my character. And then try to, make sure that you truly allow that and you live a genuine life where those actually are what drive your decisions, what drive your choices, and so forth. It's easy to probably go through the values exercise and say what this is really important. But, for me, my family is really important to me and so forth. But you may not live that value if you're spending all your time at work and not, giving time to your family. And so you've got to make sure that you kind of make those adjustments as you go through your career so you don't get off misaligned with who you are inside, but you actually, kind of can go back to those to kind of help you navigate the life that you live.
Yeah. I think everybody should write their value structure down, and because it's a good place to go back and revisit often when you're struggling a little bit or coming up against a tough decision, or just faced with a situation you just don't really know which way to go.
Well, it helps you through the crucibles, which is kind of it really, that's when you I would say when you're in the stormy waters and you're trying not to drown, those are the rocks you can grab onto and hold on to and survive. Sometimes that's what gets you through it.
Yeah, good, really good. So Todd, thank you so much for joining me today on the Leadership Crucible podcast. It's just been an honor to meet you, and look forward to having you on again in the future.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Randy. It's great to be here, and I'm humbled. I've been pretty fortunate the different things I've got to do in my life, and so thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to yourself and your audience. This is kind of the first thing I've done a podcast like this. I've talked to audiences about space. I've taught college, but this is a little more personal, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk today.
Well, thanks, Todd, and thanks for being on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Crucible podcast. If you have a story of adversity you'd like to share, we'd love to hear it. Join us next time as we continue to explore how to live lives of success and significance.